They thought $350 could erase me, that a line on an expense report was enough to bury 10 years of my life. They were wrong. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't fight in the conference room. I simply opened my laptop, the same one that had kept their world breathing at 3 in the morning, and I reviewed the licenses they'd never once read. My name is Lily Hayes. For a decade, I was the invisible engineer behind Westbridge Technology's digital heartbeat, the ghost in their servers. I wasn't in the glossy annual reports or smiling in photo ops. I was the one who patched the failing database during a thunderstorm, who traced a memory leak through a maze of microservices before the CFO even knew a problem existed. My code wasn't flashy, but it kept the lights on. And for 10 years, I stayed in the shadows. The morning everything changed started quietly enough. A gray March sky hung over San Francisco, the kind of sky that made the bay look like steel. I was in the office early, as usual, nursing my second cup of black coffee while I reviewed overnight logs. All green, no errors. My systems had once again done their silent job. "Lily, got a minute?" I looked up. Standing by my desk was Marcus Klein, our brand new CTO. 6 weeks into the role and already notorious. Tall, sharp suit, and the kind of smile that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. Harvard MBA, no technical background. He'd been hired, according to the company-wide email, to modernize operations and streamline costs. Translation: make cuts, shake things up, and remind the board why they were paying him $500,000 a year. "Sure," I said, locking my screen. He didn't sit. Power move number 1. Instead, he pulled out a folder, flipped it open, and slid a single sheet toward me. "We've been reviewing expenses. This one stands out." I scanned the paper. A $350 hotel bill. My stomach sank. "That was the night of the Denver outage," I said evenly. "The data center fire. I flew out at 3 a.m. when no one else would. Stayed overnight because the return flights were grounded." Marcus tilted his head. "Still, it's irregular. Booking on your own card without prior approval. Finance flagged it." I submitted the receipt. It was pending reimbursement. "Not anymore." His voice was smooth, rehearsed. "The board sees this as a serious violation. Misuse of company funds. I'm afraid it's grounds for termination." For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of the servers in the next room. 10 years reduced to a hotel bill. "You're firing me. Over $350? I asked quietly. Marcus didn't flinch. "Security will escort you out. Your belongings will be mailed." I stood, more out of muscle memory than conscious thought, and gathered my mug, my notebook. Around us, the office buzzed on, oblivious. Keys clacking, phones ringing. No one realized they were watching an execution. "Your badge and laptop," Marcus said, hand outstretched. I unclipped the badge from my belt, set it on the desk, and slid my laptop across. Each movement precise. Controlled. Inside, something colder was already spinning up, like code compiling in the background. "Anything else?" I asked. He smiled, the kind of smile men like him use when they think they've won. "Number security will see you out." The guard, young and uncomfortable, appeared at my elbow, probably making minimum wage to escort someone who'd built systems before he'd finished high school. "Sorry about this," he muttered. "Not your fault," I said. The elevator ride stretched into eternity. 23 floors of silence, numbers blinking down one by one. By the time we reached the lobby, that cold calculation had hardened into something sharper. They thought $350 was worth more than 10 years of knowledge. They thought I'd vanish quietly, like I'd always worked quietly. But they had no idea what they'd just purchased. Outside, the rain had turned to mist. I stepped onto Market Street with nothing but my bag, my notebook, and the knowledge that Westbridge Technologies was still running on code they didn't own. Code I had written. Code I had licensed. Code I had meticulously documented. The same code they had just cut loose with me. I pulled out my phone, Scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. Rachel Monroe. My law school roommate, now one of the sharpest intellectual property attorneys in the city. She answered on the second ring. Lily, it's been forever. Coffee? I asked. I need to discuss some licensing issues. Her tone shifted instantly. Serious? Very. I looked back at Westbridge's gleaming tower, its logo glittering through the drizzle. They fired me today. Over $350. There was a pause, then Rachel's voice sharpened. Oh, Lily, they have no idea what they've just done, do they? I smiled faintly, pulling my jacket tighter as the mist clung to my hair. No, I said, but they're about to learn. Rachel raised an eyebrow. That's creative. After 10 years? 10 years, I said. One fire after another, one 3 a.m. call after another, one system crash avoided after another. And all of it gone because a CTO wanted to show he's tough on expenses. Marcus Klein? You've heard of him? She smirked. Everyone's heard of him. He's a case study waiting to happen. The kind of exec who thinks code is a liability and engineers are replaceable. Her words cut, because I'd felt replaceable for years, but I shook that off and pulled out my personal laptop. That's why I called you. I need to know where I stand. I opened GitHub. Repo after repo, each carefully documented. Each with timestamps, commit histories, and license files I'd drafted myself. I turned the screen toward her. These libraries, I said. I wrote them on my own time, on my own equipment. I integrated them into Westbridge's systems because they needed solutions, and I wasn't about to watch us go down when I could fix it. Rachel leaned forward, scrolling. MIT license here, GPL here. Wait. She froze at one repo. This one's your custom license? Yeah, drafted it 3 years ago. Free for personal use. Requires commercial licensing for any for-profit entity. Her eyes widened. And they've been using this in production? For years, I said. Payment systems, authentication layers, even their internal monitoring. It's everywhere. Rachel leaned back, smiling slowly. You paranoid genius. You've been preparing for this. Not preparing, I corrected. Surviving. I learned early that companies love using your work, but hate paying for it. So I made sure the terms were clear, even if no one ever bothered to read them. She tapped her pen against the table. How much are we talking about? I pulled up my tracking dashboard. Every API call logged, every build process recorded, every instance spun up. Conservative estimate? $2 million in licensing fees. Maybe more once we calculate the damages for unauthorized use. Rachel whistled low. That's not pocket change. It's not about the money, I said. It's about 10 years of invisible work, about being the ghost they only remembered when things broke. And now they've made me visible. Rachel studied me for a long moment. Okay, first step, we document everything. Every commit, every Slack message, every time your repos were used in production. I'll make the case airtight. Already done. I slid a USB drive across the table. 3 years of logs, build pipelines, internal messages, everything. She laughed, shaking her head. You're either the most prepared client I've ever had, or the most dangerous. Maybe both. Her tone shifted, serious now. Lily, once we send this, there's no going back. You'll be burning every bridge. Any chance of going back, gone. Are you ready for that? I looked down at my coffee, the surface rippling as I exhaled. I thought about the years of silence, of watching others take credit, of Marcus smiling as he held out his hand for my badge. They lit the match when they fired me, I said quietly. All I'm doing is choosing where the fire spreads. Rachel nodded. Then let's spread it carefully. We spent the next 2 hours sketching a plan. Rachel would prepare the demand letter, citing every license violation. I would continue monitoring Westbridge's usage from the outside. My hook still embedded in the libraries gave me real-time visibility. How long do you want to wait? She asked as we packed up. Long enough for it to hurt, I said. for them to feel the absence before they realize the cost. That's cold. That's business. They taught me that this morning. When I left the cafe, the drizzle had stopped. The city lights glistened on wet pavement, sharp and unforgiving. I walked home slowly, laptop heavy in my bag, mind racing. My apartment felt strange at 2 p.m. on a weekday. Too quiet. I set down my bag, placed the succulent from my desk on the windowsill, and opened my laptop. Out of habit, I checked Westbridge's public status page. All green, all systems humming. My code still doing its job, even as HR processed my termination paperwork. The irony didn't escape me, but I knew those green lights wouldn't last, because Marcus thought he'd saved $350, and he had no idea what that decision was about to cost him. The first week after my termination was quiet. Too quiet. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't waking at 2 a.m. to a Slack ping or an emergency call. I went for morning runs. I cooked dinner without checking error logs. I even slept through the night, though my dreams still carried the hum of server fans. But habits don't die easily. Every morning, I opened my laptop, not to log in to Westbridge systems. They'd revoked my access instantly, but to check my own monitoring dashboard. Because what Marcus didn't know was this. My libraries weren't just code dumps. They were living systems. Every API call, every integration, every unusual spike. I'd built telemetry hooks into them. Not malicious, not backdoors, just the kind of responsible monitoring any open source maintainer would keep. And it gave me a window into their world. On Tuesday, I saw the first flicker. A junior developer pushed a cleanup commit, removing what they thought were redundant error handlers. I recognized the fingerprints immediately. Logan-style thinking, clean, simple, pretty. Except those handlers weren't redundant. They were protecting against obscure edge cases in a third-party API. By Thursday, response times had spiked. Not enough for the public to notice, but enough that I knew they'd introduced a race condition. Give it a week, maybe 2, and they'd have their first outage. Friday afternoon it came. My phone buzzed with a news alert while I was standing in line at the grocery store. Westbridge Technologies suffers payment processing outage, thousands of transactions affected. I dropped a carton of eggs into my basket, pulled up the public status page on my phone. Still green. They were hiding it. But my telemetry told the truth. The payment service was eating memory like wildfire. I could picture it. Dashboards flashing red, engineers scrambling, Marcus pacing and demanding answers. 3 hours later, they'd rolled back the commit. Service restored, but the damage done. A few thousand failed transactions, enough for CFOs to start asking why. That night, Rachel called. "You see the news?" I saw. Stock dipped 2% already. People are spooked. I stirred my pasta. "And this is just the beginning." She chuckled. "You're enjoying this." "I'm enjoying the justice." The following week, the cracks widened. Their monthly deployment cycle was scheduled. Big updates. Multiple services touched at once. I knew the pipeline better than anyone. I had built it, patched it, kept it alive with duct tape and stubbornness. Saturday morning, coffee in hand, I watched from my balcony as my dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. Service A deployed successfully, but expected Service B's new API. Service B couldn't start because Service C's migrations were incomplete. Service C waited on Service A's lock. Deadlock. Circular dependency. The whole system grinding to a halt. I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee, imagining the war room. Marcus sweating under the fluorescent lights. Engineers huddled over laptops. Pizza boxes piling up. The frantic search for a fix. By Sunday morning, the outage had made headlines. Second major disruption at Westbridge in 10 days. Their stock dropped another 3%. LinkedIn lit up with recruiters circling like sharks, messaging Westbridge engineers who were tired of firefighting. That afternoon, my phone rang. Westbridge corporate prefix. I hesitated, then answered. "Lily?" The voice was Marcus. I smiled. "Marcus, didn't expect to hear from you." I need to clear something up." We've had some technical issues. I read the news. You know our system's better than anyone. If you could just point us in the right direction. I don't work there anymore, remember? Still, some guidance would be, check your dependency graph, I said. Look for cycles. And Marcus? I let my voice drop, calm and sharp. Next time you think $350 is more valuable than 10 years of experience, remember this moment. Silence. Then a clipped, fine. He hung up. By Monday, Rachel had finished her review. Every license violation documented, every timestamp logged, every Slack message proving they knew they were using my personal repos. This is airtight, she said, sliding the draft letter across the cafe table. We send this, they'll panic. Good, I said. She studied me. You really want to go through with this? You'll be burning the bridge completely. They burned it first. We set the send date for the following Monday. Enough time for Westbridge to believe they'd stabilized, just as the board prepared for its quarterly review. That evening, I poured a glass of wine and stood at my window, watching the city lights blur through the drizzle. My succulent sat on the sill, patient and alive. They thought they'd saved $350. By the time the letter hit their inbox, they would realize what that $350 had really cost. Monday arrived gray and wet, the kind of San Francisco morning that makes the streetlights look tired. I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and reread Rachel's draft one more time. Demand for payment of licensing fees for unauthorized commercial use. Itemized by library, instance count, and months of use. Invoice totaling $2,120,000 plus statutory interest and legal costs. 14 days to pay or cease all use immediately. Attached. Commit histories from my personal machine, timestamps outside work hours, Slack excerpts where managers approved integrating Lily's personal repo, and the email from the previous CTO acknowledging that my ownership remained mine. Ready? Rachel said over the phone. Send it, I said. At 9:01 a.m., her email left the outbox and slid into Westbridge's legal inbox with a read receipt. I watched my telemetry screen. Quiet, steady, the green pulse of systems still leaning on my work. At 9:18, an auto-reply from their general counsel's office. Received. At 9:37, a calendar invite. Urgent, licensing claim discussion. 30 minutes later with their deputy GC, a senior HR partner, and, of course, Marcus. I joined the call as Lily with counsel. Rachel's square lit up beside mine. The deputy GC began, Ms. Hayes, Ms. Monroe, we dispute the premise. Any code developed during employment is work for hire. Rachel didn't raise her voice. The code at issue was developed on Ms. Hayes' personal equipment, outside work hours, under an acknowledged exception documented by your previous CTO. You'll find that email in Exhibit C silence, then paper shuffling. We've seen it, the GC said, voice tighter. Even so, $2,012,000 is excessive. It's calculated conservatively, Rachel replied. Per instance, per month below market rates. You are welcome to cease use immediately and owe nothing further. We can't simply switch off core systems, the HR partner blurted. Rachel let the pause do the work. Then you should budget for what you've been using. Marcus finally spoke. This feels like extortion. It's contract law, I said. You ignored licenses. You used my work at scale. I sent the invoice you never expected to see. They requested time to confer. We ended the call. 10 minutes later, my dashboard lit up. Dozens of new ephemeral instances spinning, engineers trying to map dependencies. The irony made me laugh into my coffee. Their attempt to understand increased the very usage metrics justifying the invoice. By 11:26, my phone rang. Marcus, directly. I let it go to voicemail, then played it on speaker while I updated a spreadsheet. Lily, this is Marcus. The board wants to know if there's a number you'd accept to settle quickly. We'll need an NDA. Call me. Rachel called a minute later. They blinked. They want silence, I said. They want time, she corrected. We can give them neither unless the price includes it. At noon, a small storm broke online. A junior developer accidentally pushed an internal doc to a public repo. Nothing explosive, just an architecture diagram showing my libraries in the center of almost everything. Someone screenshotted it before they could pull it. A tech blog posted an item. Westbridge's core built on engineers' personal libraries? The stock dipped another %. My telemetry showed chaos. Rollbacks, restarts, a traffic spike, then a flat line as they froze deployments. At 2:05 p.m., another call. This time, the general counsel and the CFO. Rachel and I joined. No Marcus on the invite. We're prepared to discuss payment. The GC said, voice measured. But we require full confidentiality, a global release, and an ongoing license included. Rachel stayed polite. Past usage is past usage. Payment of the invoice plus fees. If you want future usage, we'll discuss it separately. At market rates, with the support agreement, and my client won't agree to a gag order about her own resume. The CFO cleared his throat. What would market rates look like? Depends on scope, Rachel said. But your alternative is a rewrite. How long will that take? The CFO didn't answer directly. Numbers live behind faces like his. He knew. We'll revert with a formal proposal, the GC said, and the line went dead. I stood and stretched, feeling the tightness between my shoulders release. Outside, the rain had tapered to a mist again. I watched a streetcar slide past and thought of 10 years of invisible labor reduced to an argument over a hotel receipt. At 4:12 p.m., Marcus called again. I answered. You're blowing this out of proportion, he said. The board is furious. If you'd been reasonable... I was reasonable for a decade, I said. That's what kept your dashboards green. I can fix this, he snapped, as if saying it might make it true. Just tell me the number. It isn't about a number to you. It's about control. Tell your board they hired a CTO who didn't read the licenses. He swore under his breath. You won't work in this town again. Marcus, I said gently, that's the part you don't get. I'm already working on my terms. I hung up, then shut my laptop and let the apartment go quiet. For the first time since that Monday morning elevator ride, I felt something like anger lift off my chest and drift out with the steam from my mug. At 7:53 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an old colleague in finance. Emergency board session. You didn't hear it from me, but they're done with him. I didn't reply. I didn't gloat. I stood at the window and watched the city lights come on, one by one. At 9:06 p.m., Rachel called. It's official. Leadership update. CTO transition effective immediately. They've asked for a meeting tomorrow to finalize payment of the invoice and begin license negotiations. I closed my eyes, exhaled. The number mattered. The principle mattered more. They thought they saved $350, I said. Now they know what it cost. Sleep, Rachel said. Tomorrow we put this in writing. I set my phone face down, the room dim but warm, the succulent on the sill catching the last of the streetlight. Somewhere in a conference room I used to patch with pizza and patience. A chair sat empty. The board had learned a lesson. Marcus had learned a lesson. And I, finally, was done being invisible. By morning, the rain was a mist. Rachel and I rode to the 23rd floor without speaking. The same elevator that carried me down with a guard now carried me up as a guest. In the conference room, the deputy GC, the CFO, 2 from procurement, and an engineer I trusted, Elena Cho, interim CTO, on the placard. No, Marcus. The deputy GC began. Ms. Hayes, Ms. Monroe, thank you for coming. We'd like to resolve past use and discuss a path forward. Rachel nodded. Numbers first. The CFO slid a schedule across the table. We accept the invoice as presented. $2,120,000 for past licensing. We'll cover external legal costs. $41,300. Wire within 3 business days. I exhaled. And the future? Elena leaned forward. We want to keep using your libraries. They work. We'll do it correctly. Rachel slid our proposal over. 3-year commercial license, unlimited internal use within current product scope. Annual fee, $360,000 billed quarterly. Optional support on time and materials capped at 40 hours per quarter. No exclusivity. Ownership stays with Ms. Hayes. Procurement exchanged a look. The CFO did math. We can live with that, he said. 2 conditions: mutual non-disparagement limited to public statements and confidentiality on specific financial terms. Acceptable, Rachel said, provided Ms. Hayes can describe her role as a vendor and list Westbridge as a client. Agreed, the GC said. We'll also update travel policy for emergency spend. That should have been obvious. Elena met my eyes. I'm sorry for how this happened. I nodded. Thank you. We spent an hour on operational details, how the license keys would be issued, what telemetry was allowed, security sign-off, and a deprecation plan if they ever replaced a module. Before we left, the CFO asked, Do you want a statement? Publish an engineering blog post on how you evaluate open source and internal tools, I said. Credit maintainers, don't mention me. Elena smiled. We can do that. In the elevator down, Rachel bumped my shoulder. Terms, not favors, she said. Terms, not favors, I echoed. The wire hit the next afternoon, the invoice and the fees. I took a photo and closed the laptop. I didn't celebrate. I slept. Weeks settled into a new routine. I formed an LLC, documented what only I could decipher, wrote migration guides, added tests. 2 former colleagues asked about licenses at their new companies. A startup in Oakland emailed. Then a healthcare platform in Portland. My calendar filled without a recruiter in sight. Westbridge stabilized under Elena. We spoke once a month, not as boss and employee, but as 2 engineers who preferred systems that worked to decks that sparkled. After their first quiet quarter, she wrote, Thank you. We slept. I forwarded it to Rachel with a single line. Worth it. I kept the $350 hotel receipt in a clear frame on my desk. Not a trophy, a label for a specimen. A reminder that neglect is expensive, that reading matters, that invisible work is only invisible until you remove it. One Saturday, I repotted the succulent from my old desk. It had 2 offshoots. I put one in a clay pot with a note. For the ops team, water weekly, read the run books. I left it with the guard for Elena. No flourish, just a quiet instruction. 6 months later, Westbridge published the engineering post. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't mention me. It talked about budgeting for maintenance and respecting licenses the way you respect a power contract or a lease. The comments were mundane and supportive. Exactly right. That night, I walked home in a light rain and thought about the message I wanted to leave when people watch this story. Not that revenge pays, though sometimes it does. Not that lawyers win, though good ones help. The message was smaller and heavier. Put value where the work is. Read what you sign. Pay for what you use. Don't confuse quiet with replaceable. They fired me over a $350 hotel bill. The invoice didn't just end a resume line, it rewrote my job description. I'm not anyone's ghost now. I'm a name on a contract, a line item in a budget, a maintainer who answers to uptime and ethics in equal measure. The city was silver with mist when I reached my building. I dried the succulent's leaves, set it back on the sill, and opened my laptop. Somewhere, in racks I'll never see, my libraries ticked forward. Reliable work at a fair price. I pushed a small update, wrote a clean commit message, and closed the lid. They thought $350 could erase me. It turned out to be the exact cost of learning my worth. He thought my login was a key to brilliance. He didn't know I'd already changed the locks. Tomorrow, in front of our biggest client, he'll present what he believes is genius strategy. What he doesn't know is that every slide, every chart, every number will collapse under the first real question. And I'll be right there, in the front row, watching his world implode. My name is Emma Clark. I'm 34 years old, senior data strategist at one of the largest consulting firms in New York. For 7 years, I've been the quiet architect behind projects that brought millions to the company. My colleagues call me reliable. My performance reviews praise my attention to detail. But the same line appears every year. Emma needs to work on her executive presence. That's corporate code for, she does the work, but we can't picture her leading. I know what invisibility feels like. I've watched junior analysts present my models to the board. I've seen managers repackage my insights with their name on the slide deck. I've stayed in the office past midnight fixing disasters no one else could solve, only to watch someone else smile for the credit. The truth is, I learned long ago. When you're invisible, you see everything. That's how I saw him. Liam Foster, 28 years old, business school graduate, expensive suit, expensive watch, and the arrogant calm of someone who has never been told no. He had one qualification that outshined all others. He was the CEO's only son. And in a firm like ours, that was more powerful than a PhD, more valuable than a decade of experience. When Liam joined, it wasn't through HR. It was at a Monday morning meeting when our CEO announced him with pride. My son will be taking a leadership role in our most critical accounts. He represents the future of the company. The future. That word stung, because I knew what it meant. The future was Liam in the spotlight, and me in the shadows, quietly making sure his spotlight didn't collapse. Our biggest client this year was Crestmont Industries, a $50 million engagement to rebuild their retail data infrastructure. The kind of project that defines careers, the kind of client you cannot afford to lose. Naturally, I expected to be buried in the back end as usual, doing the heavy lifting while Liam smiled for the cameras. And I was right. From his first day, Liam was a hurricane. He didn't ask. He demanded, "Emma, send me the quarterly churn analysis. Emma, I need the revenue projections by noon." "No, please, no thank you. Just assumption." And when he forwarded my reports, my name vanished. His signature appeared at the bottom. At first, I bit my tongue. I'd played this game before. But then he crossed a line. It was a Thursday afternoon, nearly 5 p.m., when Liam walked into my office without knocking. He leaned against the doorframe like he owned the place. "I need your login credentials for the Crestmont folder," he said. Not asked. Said. I paused. "Those are my working files, Liam. They're not ready for client use." He waved a hand as if brushing away a fly. "I just need some visuals for a deck I'm pulling together. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Send me the password." And just like that, he left. Expensive cologne lingering in the air. I sat there staring at my screen, 7 years of being overlooked flooding my chest. How many times had I been told I wasn't leadership material, while watching leaders like Liam, who couldn't explain a single formula, take credit for my work? Something inside me shifted that day. Not rage. Rage burns too quickly. This was colder, sharper. Calculation. I opened a new folder. Crestmont Final, EC. My initials at the end, subtle enough to be ignored. Inside, I began crafting a different kind of deliverable. Not lies. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, I built analyses that looked flawless at a glance, but were catastrophically wrong under scrutiny. A retention model with inverted formulas. A revenue projection based on outdated exchange rates. A segmentation strategy pulled from demographics. Crestmont hadn't targeted in a decade. Beautiful to the eye. Fatal in reality. Then I saved the real versions, clean, correct, airtight, into a separate, secured folder, complete with documentation trails and timestamps. If Liam wanted my login, I'd give it. And I'd give him exactly what he deserved. When the email arrived, "Send me your credentials ASAP." My reply was short. Here you go. The files you need are in Crestmont Final. E.C. Send. The trap was set. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Liam present my poisoned files in internal meetings, bragging about the insights he'd developed. His voice steady, his smile unwavering. I stayed quiet, nodding in support, documenting every misstep. Each claim he made bound him tighter to the lies. Each compliment he received from executives made his eventual fall heavier. Tomorrow, he will walk into Cressman's boardroom wearing his $3,000 suit and his father's confidence. He will project my corrupted files on a screen worth more than my car. And he will promise the impossible. And me? I'll be sitting in the front row, my leather folder on my lap, containing every real analysis, every timestamp, every piece of evidence. Waiting. The beauty of a trap is that the victim springs it themselves. The morning after I handed over my login, the entire office seemed to orbit around Liam. He walked through the halls like he was born to own them. Handshakes, easy smiles, the kind of polished confidence that money buys and upbringing reinforces. People leaned in when he spoke, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, nodded at insights that weren't his. I watched from the sidelines, unnoticed as always. That was my gift, really. Being invisible means you can study people in ways they can't study you. And what I saw in Liam was not brilliance, but bravado. He knew the language of leadership, big words, polished gestures, but not the substance beneath. The first test came a week later in a team meeting. Liam presented my retention model, one of the poisoned files I'd planted. On the screen, charts glowed in corporate blues and greens, arrows pointing upward. He cleared his throat, voice carrying with authority. Our analysis shows a dramatic shift in customer behavior. Retention rates appear far lower than expected, meaning Crestmont has urgent opportunities to re-engage their premium clients. I almost smiled. That single sentence contained a time bomb. Across the table, Sarah from Analytics frowned. Are you sure about that? I thought retention had been improving, not dropping. Liam gave her a smile that could have been rehearsed in a mirror. Sometimes data forces us to challenge our assumptions. That's why Crestmont hired us, to bring in fresh perspectives. The room nodded. No one pushed further. Not yet. But I logged the moment. 10:42 a.m., Thursday, January 12th. Screenshot saved. Each day, Liam pulled deeper from the poisoned well. He forwarded client emails my way with a one-line instruction. Handle this. He stripped my name from models, slapped his initials on presentations, and passed them off as original thought. He was building a tower of lies, brick by brick, and he never noticed the foundation was already cracking. Still, I wasn't reckless. I built my insurance carefully. The real models sat in my secured folders, version histories intact. Every dummy file bore my digital fingerprints. Creation dates, embedded initials, metadata tags that couldn't be erased without leaving evidence. Each time Liam accessed my fake folders, my little script logged the event. Date, time, IP address. He was unknowingly writing his own confession with every keystroke. 2 weeks before the client presentation, I overheard him in the break room boasting to 2 junior analysts. Honestly, this project is a breeze. I've already developed new models that will blow Crestmont's executives away. They've never seen analysis this sharp. The juniors nodded eagerly, hungry to be in his orbit. I poured my coffee in silence, invisible as usual. But inside, I was ice. Let him brag. The louder the boast, the harder the fall. The truth was, Crestmont's executives weren't fools. Margaret Hale, their CFO, was known for shredding consultants who showed up unprepared. I'd seen her in action once. Calm, polite, but deadly precise. She spotted an error in a competitor's projection in under 2 minutes and spent the rest of the meeting peeling back their assumptions until nothing was left. And that was the beauty of my trap. All it would take was one sharp question, one moment of scrutiny, and Liam's masterpiece would collapse into nonsense. He'd claim 40% growth in the dead of winter, recommend stocking summer apparel in December, argue that retirees were the prime demographic for a brand built on Gen Z trends. Impossible claims, fatal mistakes. But I wasn't naive. I knew Liam wasn't just some arrogant rookie. He was the CEO's son. Even when he failed, there would be an instinct to protect him. That's why my evidence needed to be bulletproof. Not whispers, not suspicions, but facts. Timestamps, logs, screenshots. A chain of proof so irrefutable that even family ties couldn't deny it. One late evening, as I organized my documentation, Marcus, the CEO and Liam's father, passed by my office. He paused at the door, surprised to see me still there. "Working late again, Emma?" I forced a polite smile. "Just making sure the Crestmont data is clean." He nodded approvingly. "That's why I trust you with the details. Not everyone has your discipline." Then he walked away, never guessing that his own son's fate was sealed in the very files glowing on my screen. By the third week, the tension in the office was tangible. Liam strutted with more confidence than ever, telling anyone who'd listen that Crestmont would double their investment once they saw his insights. Meanwhile, Sarah whispered to me privately, "Some of those numbers look strange. Are you sure they're right?" I gave her the same calm smile I gave everyone. "Trust the process. Everything will make sense soon." Inside, my anticipation grew. For 7 years, I had been the ghost in the machine, the woman no one remembered in promotions, the name left off the slides. But in 4 days, in a glass conference room overlooking the city, I would finally step into the light. And Liam? He would discover what happens when you try to steal from someone invisible. Because invisibility, I'd learned, isn't weakness. It's a weapon. The Friday before the Crestmont presentation, I arrived earlier than usual. The office was quiet, just the hum of servers and the faint whir of the cleaning staff's vacuum on another floor. I liked it that way. Silence gave me clarity. I poured myself coffee and opened the secured folder on my laptop. The real analysis glowed on my screen. Clean models, logical forecasts, projections grounded in reality. 8% growth in Q3, 5% in Q4. Manageable challenges, real opportunities, the kind of work that could stand up to scrutiny anywhere. Then, with one click, I opened the other folder. The poisoned one. Charts with inverted formulas, projections in the wrong currency, demographic targeting pulled from outdated years. Beautiful to the untrained eye, catastrophic to anyone who actually understood Crestmont's business. And those were the files Liam had been parading as his own brilliance for the past month. My little script confirmed it again. 27 separate logins from Liam, each download neatly logged. He'd even renamed the files, stripping away my initials, stamping his into the headers. The arrogance was breathtaking. That morning, HR sent out an internal email. Reminder, Crestmont presentation Monday at 9 a.m. Sharp, dress code, business formal. All hands in support roles should be prepared. In support roles. That's what I'd been for 7 years. The person in the corner, silent, fixing disasters while others got applause. But Monday would be different. Monday, I wouldn't just be in support. I spent most of the day preparing my portfolio. Every chart, every real model printed and bound in a leather folder. Timestamps, metadata, screenshots of Slack messages, even version histories. Not dramatic accusations, just facts laid out clearly, step by step. My insurance policy. By mid-afternoon, Liam strutted into my office without knocking. He leaned against the doorframe, grinning like a politician. "Big day Monday. You'll be there, right? In case they throw technical questions." His tone wasn't a request, it was an order. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied evenly. "Good." He straightened his tie and flashed that practice smile. "Not that I'll need backup. The work speaks for itself." I almost laughed. Yes, it did. That weekend, I tried to relax, but the anticipation gnawed at me. I walked around the city, sat in cafes, pretended to read. But my mind kept circling back to Crestmont's boardroom, to the moment when impossible numbers would be projected on a 12-foot screen. Sunday night, my phone buzzed with an unexpected email from Marcus, our CEO. Emma, please bring supporting documentation to tomorrow's meeting. Liam mentioned you've been keeping the technical backups. I stared at the message for a long time. Of course. Liam was already building his escape route. If things went south, he'd try to redirect blame. Say I'd given him faulty numbers or claim I'd failed to clarify. He thought he was clever, lining up a scapegoat. But scapegoats don't usually carry portfolios of evidence. I typed my reply. Of course. I'll bring everything. That night, I laid out my charcoal suit, polished my shoes, and placed the portfolio by the door. Inside, 2 stories waited. One false, one true. By 9 a.m. tomorrow, only one would survive. Monday morning, the lobby was buzzing. Consultants in sharp suits clustered in small groups, rehearsing sound bites, double-checking slides. Liam arrived like he owned the building. Expensive suit, perfect hair, that easy grin. People flocked to him, eager to be in his orbit. I walked past unnoticed, my leather folder under my arm. That was fine. Being invisible had always been my strength. We rode the elevator together to the top floor. Liam chatted with another manager about reshaping retail landscapes and innovative growth levers. Buzzwords polished to perfection. I stayed silent, focused on the floor numbers ticking upward. The Crestmont boardroom was everything I expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline, a table that could seat 20, screens larger than my living room wall. One by one, executives filed in. Margaret Hale, the CFO, with her sharp eyes and sharper questions. James Donovan, the CEO, calm and composed, the kind of leader who'd built an empire from nothing. Marcus and 2 other partners took seats along the wall. Liam sat up at the front, clicking through his slides, confident, radiant. I chose my spot deliberately. Front row, directly across from Margaret Hale. I placed my folder on the table, closed but within reach. As Liam opened the meeting with his polished introduction, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The pieces were in place. The trap was ready. All I had to do now was wait. Liam opened with confidence so polished it almost squeaked. Company overview, market trends, slides that said everything and nothing. The room eased into a rhythm. Heads nodding, pens tapping, the ritual of corporate theater. Then he advanced to the first critical slide. Revenue projections. A neat line shot up in Q4 like a rocket. 40+% growth. In December, in the Northeast. Across from me, Margaret Hale lifted her eyes from the screen to Liam, then back again. Can you walk me through the assumptions behind that Q4 acceleration? Her tone was neutral, precise. Liam didn't miss a beat. We've identified underpenetrated winter segments. With targeted promotions and optimized inventory mix, we believe Crestmont can unlock outsized seasonal demand. Optimized? How? Margaret asked. No edge, just the knife laid flat on the table. We'll shift assortment to align with the new segments, Liam said. Increase heat in categories with the highest elasticity. It sounded like English. It wasn't saying anything. James Donovan, Crestmont's CEO, leaned forward. James, he said, we have 32 winters of data. We've never beaten Q3 in Q4, not once. Liam clicked again to segmentation. A tidy cluster plot labeled Primary Growth 55 to 70. Retirees is the engine of a brand built on athleisure and downtown pop-ups. Margaret's eyebrow lifted. You're suggesting our growth is driven by retirees? Emerging opportunity, Liam said. A neglected cohort with high lifetime value. Margaret glanced at her tablet, then back at the slide. Our revenue is 76% 25 to 34. That's not a belief. That's our internal data for the last 3 years. A thinning silence settled. Pens stopped tapping. Liam's smile strained but held. Sometimes internal views lag the market. We're challenging assumptions. He advanced to inventory optimization. A colorful calendar grid pulsed on the screen. The caption, Winter Mix Shift, Outerwear/Resort. It took 2 seconds for the room temperature to drop. James folded his hands. Are you advising we cut outerwear in December and expand resort? Based on projected footfall from travel-adjacent locations, yes, Liam said. Underexploited adjacency. Margaret didn't look up. Projected from which locations? Composite of Midwest and Northeast stores. Then why is the seasonal coefficient tagged Sunbelt 14? She asked, still reading. Because that's a Sunbelt coefficient. A ripple passed around the table. Even Liam's confidence flickered. That's a label artifact. The math is sound. Margaret lifted her gaze. Is it? She tapped her screen. Because your Q4 revenue sheet references FXUSDAUD at 0.74 in the conversion helper. We're a US retailer. Why are you converting Australian dollars? Liam blinked. We standardized currency to maintain... To maintain what? James asked, mild as snow. We sell coats in Chicago, not cairns. Someone near the end of the table coughed, the kind of cough that tries to bury a laugh. Liam's hand tightened on the clicker. He moved to churn. My inverted formula gleamed in corporate blue. Premium retention at 18%. Industry devastating. Margaret didn't even ask. Our last monthly cohort shows 82% retention for premium. This says 18. You're off by a factor of 4.5. New cohort definition, Liam said. We're using a stricter window to expose the leak. It's inverted, Margaret answered. Your denominator is wrong. A G 247 points to loss, labeled as keep her eyes flicked up, steady. Who built this? Team effort, Liam said smoothly. I led methodology. My folder felt suddenly heavy in my lap. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The room was doing the work. Mr. Foster, James said, voice soft enough to make everyone lean in. Do you understand our business? Silence. Liam opened his mouth, then closed it again. His father, Marcus, shifted on his chair along the wall, face unreadable. James looked past Liam, to me. Emma, is there anything you want to add? Every head turned. The old reflex, to minimize, to stay small, flashed and died. I set my folder on the table, stood, and held up an HDMI cable. May I asked. James nodded. Liam stepped aside, stiff as a mannequin. I connected my laptop. The screen changed. Gone were the impossible spikes. In their place, a modest 8% in Q3, tapering to 5 in Q4, with confidence intervals and notes that matched Crestmont's reality. This projection accounts for 32 winters of historicals, I said. My voice surprised me. Calm, even. Footfall declines 59 to 63% after October across your Midwest locations. Any model showing Q4 outpacing Q3 is misspecified or mixing geographies. Margaret was already nodding. That aligns with our view. I clicked to segmentation. Primary revenue is 25 to 34, 76% last year, rising to 78 this quarter. The earlier analysis used 2014 segmentation logic. Crestmont repositioned in 2019, I advanced to inventory. Outerwear is correctly weighted for December through February. The resort lift in the other deck came from Sunbelt coefficients mistakenly applied to Midwest stores. A label artifact would not redirect a formula. The range reference was wrong. No one interrupted. The room felt closer now, as if the table had quietly tightened around the truth. I moved to retention. Premium retention is 82%. The other file inverted the calculation. AG 247 points to the loss flag. Here's the corrected sheet, with audit trail. Margaret's pen hovered, then dropped. Thank you. I stopped. I hadn't mentioned Liam. I hadn't needed to. The numbers were their own witness. James tapped his finger once on the table. One question, he said to me. How did we get shown that? He angled his head toward the frozen image of Liam's slide. Instead of this? I opened the folder, Pages lay in crisp order: version histories, timestamps, access logs. "These are the preliminary drafts I keep for internal stress testing," I said. "Marked not for distribution. They were accessed, renamed, and presented as final." I slid one page forward. "You'll see the metadata change on the distributed deck. The label preliminary was removed." Liam spoke quickly, too quickly. "Emma supplied the wrong numbers. I asked for the final file and she—" "The access log shows 43 downloads from my prelim directory in 4 weeks," I said, keeping my voice level. "Each occurred after I flagged the final versions in our secured path." I didn't look at him. I looked at James. "The client deserves accurate work. This," I tapped my screen, "is accurate." Silence again, the decisive kind. James stood. "We'll take 10 minutes," he said. "Emma, please stay. Everyone else, give us the room." Chairs slid, paper rustled. Liam didn't move at first. Then he did, jaw set, eyes everywhere but mine. Marcus followed him out, a fraction too slowly. The door closed. The room felt larger. Margaret exhaled. "Emma," she said quietly, "can you deliver the analysis you just showed us under our timeline?" "Yes," I said, "with authority to choose the team. Direct access to your data. Clear sign-off protocols." James nodded once. "Good." Outside the glass, I could see Liam on the phone, pacing, one hand to his temple. For years, I'd been invisible in rooms like this. Now the room was looking back at me. The 10 minutes hadn't passed yet. But the tide had. The 10 minutes stretched into 7. The door opened. James and Margaret returned first, faces composed. Marcus came in behind them, the careful neutrality of a man balancing 2 loyalties. Liam followed last, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the middle distance. James resumed his seat and folded his hands. "Thank you for your patience," he said. "We're continuing with the engagement under one condition. Emma leads it. Effective now." He turned to me. "Authority to pick the team, direct access to our data, and a weekly checkpoint with me and Margaret. Can you accept that?" "Yes," I said. "I'll need a clean handoff today and a working session with your finance and operations leads by Wednesday." "Done," Margaret said. Liam cleared his throat. "With respect, this change midstream will confuse the client. The original methodology—" James didn't raise his voice. "Mr. Foster, you won't be speaking for us going forward." He looked to Marcus. "I assume your firm will manage its internal process." Marcus's nod was small, controlled. "We will." The rest of the meeting was all pragmatism. Dates, deliverables, data access. I walked them through the corrected roadmap. Rebuild the churn model with transparent cohort logic, fix the geography mix in the footfall forecasts, retune inventory coefficients by climate band, establish a sign-off gate so preliminary files could never masquerade as final. No buzzwords, no theater, just work. When we broke, Margaret lingered. "I don't reward drama," she said quietly. "I reward clarity. Bring me clean numbers and people who can explain them." "You'll have both," I said. In the hallway, Marcus stopped me. Up close, he looked older than he had an hour ago. "Did you plan this?" he asked. "I plan to protect the client and my work," I said. The files Liam used were marked preliminary. I documented everything because I've learned that's the only way to be heard. He studied me a beat, then exhaled. "We'll need a formal statement for our internal review. You'll have it by end of day." Back at the office, HR called me into a glass room and turned on the recorder. I stuck to facts, dates, folders, version histories. No adjectives, no speculating about intent. When they asked if I wanted to file a complaint, I said this: "My only request is process. Clear ownership, audit trails, and consequences when those are ignored." They nodded and ended the recording. Liam didn't come back to the floor that afternoon. An email later announced he was on leave. No details. Offices are good at euphemisms. I assembled my team before the day was out. Sarah from Analytics, because she asked the right questions. Daniel from Ops, because he knew the store systems better than anyone. And Priya, a junior who'd been quietly fixing other people's SQL for a year. In our first stand-up, I laid out ground rules. Everything in version control, every assumption documented, no slides without model notes, no one presents alone. Heads nodded, relief visible. We opened the Crestmont repo and started over. The next weeks were a blur of clean work. Daily syncs with Crestmont's finance and ops. A cohort retention model that anyone could audit in 5 minutes. A seasonality framework that separated climate from calendar. A modest forecast, 6 to 8% growth in Q3, 4 to 5% in Q4, tied to levers Crestmont actually controlled. We piloted a staffing optimization at 6 stores and watched checkout times drop without overtime. When we recommended shifting outerwear buy windows by 2 weeks in the Midwest, the warehouses stopped choking in January. We didn't promise miracles. We delivered improvements. By quarter close, the numbers came in. Crestmont landed at 6.8% growth in Q3, 4.9% in Q4, within the band we'd projected. Inventory carry cost fell by $1.8 million over 2 months. Margaret sent a 3-sentence note to our firm. Thank you for the transparency. Thank you for the rigor. Keep going. I printed it and slid it into my folder behind the access logs. Both mattered. The internal part resolved quieter. Liam resigned. To pursue new opportunities. The announcement was 3 lines long. Weeks later, he sent me an email that started with defensiveness and ended with apology. I read it twice, then archived it. I wasn't interested in being his lesson. I was interested in not repeating mine. Marcus called me into his office on a rainy Tuesday. No small talk. You're leading Crestmont permanently, he said. And I want you to build a data integrity program across accounts. Title upgrade, budget, headcount. Present a plan next week. I'll do it if the rules are explicit, I said. Ownership, review gates, and real consequences when they're ignored. Otherwise, we're just changing titles. He smiled, tired but genuine. Write the rules, Emma. I walked back to my desk past the kombucha taps and the aspirational posters and thought about how quiet fights change companies. Not speeches, not takedowns. Process. Proof. People who will do the work when the stage lights are off. I didn't set out to ruin someone. I set out to protect a client and reclaim my name. The trap only existed because someone kept helping themselves to what wasn't theirs. If there's a message in any of this, it's not be ruthless. It's simpler. Document everything. Guard your work and let the truth do the heavy lifting. Competence doesn't shout. It accumulates. I still stay late sometimes. The office hums the way it did before dawn on that Friday when I checked both folders and chose which story would survive Monday. Only now, when I leave, I stop by a different office. Mine, with a door and a window and a team chart taped to the wall. Before I shut down for the night, I write 1 line at the top of the next brief. Assumptions we can defend. It's not flashy. It holds.